Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome my listeners in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and this is Talking New York Real Estate. Today, we are celebrating our 350th show. 9 years of broadcasting, and it is so hard to believe. Some of you have been with me from the very beginning. Some of you are new. But I want to say thank you to all of my listeners on my podcast and now who watch on YouTube. Without this audience, I would not be able to continue doing this. I feel blessed and I'm honored. At this hour, the real estate market in New York City is renowned for its competitiveness and dynamic nature. Several factors contribute to the intense competition here in the New York City market. The term Rainmaker typically refers to highly successful and top-performing real estate professionals. These individuals have a proven track record of generating significant business, bringing in a substantial number of clients, and closing high-volume deals. Rainmakers are also considered the elite performers in our industry due to their ability to consistently produce successful outcomes for their clients and for contributing significantly to their firm's revenue. We will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this very busy Tuesday morning. In the news this morning, in a bold move amid the uncertainty of the real estate market, two iconic New Yorkers, Billy Joel and Alec Baldwin, have opted to pull their lavish estates off the market. This all according to the New York Post. The legendary piano man made headlines in May when he listed his sprawling 26-acre estate in Oyster Bay for an eye-watering $49 million. Records show that Joel acquired the property in 2002 for $22.5 million. Meanwhile, Baldwin put his Amagansett estate on the market in September of 2022, initially asking $29 million. After a series of dramatic price cuts and a final listing price of $22.5 million, Baldwin has decided to pull his 10-acre retreat off the market. The embattled Russ star bought the 5-bedroom property in 1996 for a modest $1.75 million. The Post has reached out to both Baldwin and Joel for no comment. And new images and details of a high-rise condominium on the Upper East Side were released last week. Developed by the Alad Group, the 32-story building at 201 East 74th Street and named the 74 will be home to 42 2- to 5-bedroom apartments. Not only making a statement in the neighborhood for the height, the tower also stands out for its design, which includes squeezing in next to and cantilevering over a 110-year-old walk-up apartment building. Corcoran Sunshine Marketing Group is managing sales and marketing for the 74. Available apartments start at $2.975 million and go to $12.5 million for full-floor residents. The 74 is slated for completion in the summer of 2025. And finally, the 97th annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is ready to kick off the holiday season. Taking place this Thursday, the parade this year will include a performance by Cher, who will open for the real star of the show, Santa Claus. This year's parade features 32 novelty and heritage inflatables, 16 giant character balloons, 26 floats, 12 marching bands, 700 clowns, and 8 performance groups, all made possible thanks to roughly 5,000 volunteers. And with me today are Leonard Steinberg from Compass, Ryan Kaplan from Corcoran, Lisa Lippman from Brown Harris Stevens, and John McSherry from Douglas Elliman. Okay, a Rainmaker is a person who brings clients, business, and money to their firm. Rainmakers are focused on customers and their needs and seek to help them solve problems or cope with their challenges. They tend to be good listeners and responsive to others. They also tend to be go-getters with not only self-motivation, but also the ability to motivate others. Welcome, everybody. I'm very glad you're here. You're here because you are top performers in our industry consistently. I think that's what really, is the definitive here. Consistently top performers in a marketplace right now that's questionable, that's uncertain, that no one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. So, I'd like to start, Leonard, let me start with you. So how do you stay updated on the latest trends in the real estate marketplace? Because we're sometimes, from a trend perspective, all over the map. So how do you keep focused on what you need to do on a daily basis based on what seems to be happening in our marketplace?
Well, I think I would summarize myself as a very untrendy guy. I don't really partake much in trends, but I do try and watch patterns. And I think one of the best things to do is to not read quarterly and annual reports as if they were gospel at all. And in fact, I think the consumer has a terrible disservice in that not only they are reading the reports, but the media reports on reports, and then that becomes the official narrative of what's happening in the markets, which I think is a grotesquely inaccurate barometer of what is actually happening in the markets. Our data is painfully delayed in real estate. And reporting on closed sales can be weeks, months, and years after the fact.
And maybe not even accurate.
Exactly. So the volume of inaccuracies, the volume of information that's out there that is probably pretty useless to an individual if they're buying or selling right now, leads me to believe even further the value of a professional real estate agent and advisor, in that they have the ability to identify the data that is really of value to that specific consumer at that moment in real time. Real-time data is what drives the decisions in every other market except real estate. So I do think the conduit to that information is via professional agent, because obviously you cannot disseminate guest insights, but the insights that we gather specifically that are real time, I think, are the insights that are most meaningful to the consumer.
How do we make sure that it is real time, or that we can get more data that is real time? And also, buyers sometimes come to the table, or even sellers, because they have access to so many databases today than they actually did when I started in the business, right, 21 years ago. They have so much access to data, as I said before, not always accurate. So how do you kind of quell that, situation when they say, no, Leonard, that's not correct. I read this, or I've seen that, or the comps in the building are X or Y. You, as the professional, we as the professional, as you said, have access to those real numbers. How do you discuss that with a buyer and make them understand, no, this is the way it really is, without offending them, right?
Well, I don't think there's one even remotely conscious consumer anywhere left on the planet who isn't doubtful about what they read and what they're told. So that helps for sure. But most importantly, I think if you look at the consumer today, you understand that they are skeptical about a lot of information, and the intelligent ones do like to know specifics, and they want to understand specifics because they understand that has real value to their decision-making process.
Lisa, the real estate market, as I said before, is so unpredictable, and right now we're in a very, questionable kind of period. First of all, it's holiday season, so it's kind of slow anyway. But since interest rates started rising, a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, it kind of, stopped the flow of the marketplace. I'm going to say under $4 million, right? The higher end has continued to flourish, and it will. How do you adapt, your strategies to work with markets that are so unpredictable?
Well, I think, what you have to do is you have to stay ahead of all the information, and, sort of tagging onto what Leonard said, I don't read past reports. I don't look at comp reports, et cetera, because it really doesn't mean anything. What happened 2 months ago happened 2 months ago. What's happening right now is the most important. And if you're a busy broker working a lot, representing buyers and sellers, that's how you stay on top of what's going on in this moment. The only data I ever look at, by the way, is the Allshan report. I'll give a shout out to my friend Donna Allshan, because that's a real-time weekly report of what's gone to contract the week before, listings asking over $4 million. So that's the only thing I sort of look at, and usually it's matching what I'm experiencing. But how I stay up to date is just being conscious of what I'm doing on a daily basis, how I'm seeing people react to the market, how I'm seeing what buyers say when they come to see listings, what brokers tell me afterwards after their clients have seen a listing of mine, what my buyers are saying. I mean, one of the things that I always tell people, which I think is super important, is that I like to work with buyers and sellers. A lot of brokers have been doing this a long time, say, oh, I'm just going to take listings. They're more of a sure thing. Well, number one, in a tough market, they're not always a sure thing. Sometimes,
Absolutely.
it's only a sure thing if you're the third wife/broker. But number two, the only way to really understand what's going on in the market is to have buyers and sellers. You need to know what the buyers are saying. So,
Right.
For instance, right now, we've got lots of cash buyers. Well, cash buyers aren't stupid. They're not going to pay more, or they're going to pay. They want to get a good deal. I mean, they have cash, they know that, but they also know that they're the only people around. So what I would say in general is you really just have to keep working. You have to work a lot. I mean, I remember many, many years ago when I started 25 years ago, Chris Peters, who's still in the business, I believe.
He's retired.
Oh, he's retired.
He
but
retired
just
recently, just
months
recently.
ago.
Yeah.
He was teaching training at Corcoran, and I did that training program. That's where I started. And I raised my hand sheepishly, and I said, any advice for someone who wants to do this part-time? I had 2 little children. I thought that was going to be a great part-time job. And he started laughing at me with the cackle that he had. And he said, oh, dear, if you think you're going to do it part-time, get out of the business immediately. And I really wanted to cry. But it's true now more than ever because of all the technology and because of the pace of everything. You cannot do this part-time because if you're doing it part-time, you just don't know what's going on. You need to do it all the time.
I remember when I'm in the business 21 years, so I thought you were a lot more than me. But I remember when I would be sitting outside at High Life on Amsterdam Avenue, and you'd be coming by with the 2 kids in a carriage or a stroller, whatever, and I'd say, "Oh my God, that's Lisa Lippman! Wow!" And so you were already doing big things in those days, and I'm talking about a long time ago. Ryan, so Lisa mentions, cash is still king, cash is still out there. The higher end, 4 million and up. I tend to think that the higher end is probably like 6 million and more, but whatever it is. How are you seeing the flow of deals these days at that level?
It's interesting because I actually think the threshold of higher end is higher than we think. I have had buyers active this year in the 5 to 10 range who are still interest rate sensitive. Our barometer of what wealth is now. I mean, these are numbers that used to seem huge, and of course they still are, but it's a very, very different than when you're a $10 or a $15 million buyer and up. But even so, I sold a townhouse this year for $17 million on West 11th Street in the West Village, and those buyers used financing. The financing actually almost impeded the deal because they were borrowing from one of the banks that has now since gone under. And we closed that loan about 4 weeks before said bank crashed.
Right.
So it was a race to get that loan closed, and there was no other bank that would finance that particular deal. So I think it's kind of a false narrative that rates only impact. It's less impactful as you get higher up, but it still matters.
It's interesting to me to hear $17 million and their financing. Why would somebody do that, Leonard? I mean, if you have $17 million to buy a townhouse, I've sold a $17 million townhouse at the closing table, cash check, boom, done, right? Especially in light of the interest rates being, I think it's down to 7.44% earlier this week, still, high compared to what it used to be. Why is somebody taking financing out at those numbers?
Because they are smart. If you can earn 18% on your money, why wouldn't you borrow at 6 and 7%? Because let's face it, 7.44 is for a 30-year fixed on a non-jumbo mortgage. The bigger the mortgage, the lower the rate, the better the credit, the lower the rate. And there are other methods by which you can close all cash, refinance within 30 days after closing, and then have all the interest deducted if that capital is used for investment purposes. So the wealthy are always very much smarter than I will ever be. And everyone at this table is smarter than me because I'm looking at everyone's watches. And I don't think that I do not focus as much.
I just have a dumb old Apple Watch.
It's more expensive than mine. I have an Apple phone that tells me the time. But I think when I hear everyone talking about, the high end being 4 and 5 and 6 and $10 million, I actually cringe to a certain degree. And I do this too, so I'm guilty as charged. Anyone buying a home in New York City is buying an incredible luxury because $1 million does not buy a 5-bedroom home. $1 million is going to buy a 1-bedroom or a studio. So we, I think, have lost sight on just how small the $5 million plus market is. That's why every Sunday I look at the data and I don't just focus on the $5 million plus data. I actually look at under $1 million, $1 million to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 plus, and the top end is a tiny, tiny proportion of the city. I think our obsession globally with the ultra wealthy is not serving us very well. I do think it's an important part of what we do because we are in luxury markets, but I think our complete reluctance to focus as much on those who are looking for a semi-affordable luxury is done so at our peril because it's coming back to bite us in multiple ways, and we're going to have to pay a big price for that ultimately.
Well, it skews the numbers, first of all, or the percentages or whatever, like the Elshan report. I read that every Monday morning, for years. But you're really talking about the ultra luxury market, right? But as you say, there is so many people that fall under that luxury market that
It's
are
less than
still out there
10%
buying.
it's less than 10% of the volume of activity. So
But isn't this town so luxury focused and oriented? I mean, that word luxury sometimes, makes me cringe. I get it. It's necessary. We all, play in that field. But there's life outside of that. John, let me ask you. So from a suburban perspective, okay, selling on Long Island, my family's all from Westchester. I know that market up there is on fire hot. Whether it's first-time buyers, whether it's people financing, whether it's all cash deals, the market is hot. Something goes on the market and within a day or two, it's gone. What does it look like? How's the deal flow looking like in your territory?
Sure. So my price point in Long Island is usually around 800 to 1.2. And anything that's priced right sells very quickly in Long Island. Obviously, the rates are high, but we're seeing tremendous opportunity. The inventory is so low in Long Island, and people have to be there for work, for schools, and so forth. So the problem is we don't have enough inventory.
Absolutely. We have the problem here, too. We don't have a lot of inventory here. One of the problems of an uncertain market or interest rates rising, sellers are like, well, if I sell my apartment now at 3.5%, 4% interest, I need to upgrade, downgrade, move out. If I do that, even if I get my price, I'm now doubling my payment going forward because now I'm going to be paying 8% or 7%. Right. So that's kind of slowed down I am more of a listing agent also, and it slows down the amount of inventory on the marketplace. Ryan, talk to me a little bit about relationships. I mean, we all know in this business it's about we have relationships with our customers, with our clients, buyers, sellers, whatever. But it's also important to keep relationships going with our colleagues, right? I always say, when I'm teaching continuing ed, love your co-broker, because if you don't love your co-broker, the deal's not going to go smoothly enough, whatever. And you want to have a better reputation out there than not. So how do you cultivate those relationships with people that you need to work with and interact with every day?
I think it's a similar answer to one of the topics we just discussed, which is when to learn the data, you shouldn't read about it, you need to go out there. To sustain relationships, you need to go out there. You need to say yes. You need to go to networking events. I go to a quarterly dinner with a bunch of brokers that I've become very good friends with over the last couple of years. It's about being in person, and especially after COVID, in a post-COVID world where we like to do as many things remotely and arm's length, and I know of brokers who aren't even in New York and they're having people running around on their behalf, doing showings, doing whatever. That is not how you sustain relationships. So you have to put the time in person.
I couldn't agree with that more. And it's interesting, post-COVID, even though we are free to go to the offices and free to do whatever, I find that whenever I am in my office, it's a graveyard. There's hardly anyone there. And I used to be, pre-COVID, very much an office person. I feed off of my colleagues, my friends, listening to stories, giving advice to others who ask, whatever. Now you go to the office and you're the only one there. And so you kind of think, well, I can just stay home and do what I need to do at home quietly. But is that the right thing to do? Are you still in the office or not, Lisa?
I go into the office almost every day, and if I don't go into the office, it's literally because I'm showing so much that day that I don't have a chance. But I have a small team that works with me, and we have new offices, which are great, and we have a beautiful suite. And I think the energy there is super important. And obviously, we don't just stay in your suite. I go to the bathroom. I go to get a drink. I always talk to people as I'm walking around the office. I think you can't replace the office atmosphere. No. And I've got my 29-year-old son works with me. I also have a 26-year-old son who I feel badly for him because he did teach for America for 2 years during COVID, and now he's had 2 jobs in the startup world. And both times he hasn't really had an office environment. And I feel really badly for the kids coming, or the young adults coming out of college now, who go straight to remote jobs, because it's just not the same of what you get when you go to the office and you socialize with people after the office.
It's the culture that's necessary, but it's also from a learning perspective, right?
Absolutely.
You need to learn how to grow into who you're going to become, and that includes personality and people skills. I've always probably been too much of a personality or people skilled person, and when I don't have that, I feel like I'm completely and totally missing something. So if I'm not showing in a particular day and I decide not to go to my office all the way in the village and I'm at home working, and I always make sure I focus, I stay at my desk for as long as I can, but I'm sitting there feeling like I'm missing something.
You are. We actually
I totally am.
I just got back last week. We had our big corporate retreat, our Compass corporate retreat in
Correct.
San Diego, and the overriding theme of the entire event was how we have embraced high tech since our inception, but that this business is a hybrid of high tech and high touch. And if you take the high touch out of the equation, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice, and you're doing the consumer a disservice, because the technology is there to free up the time to be able to spend the time one-on-one with your clients and colleagues. And I frankly built my entire career on colleague relationships, not necessarily client relationships as much, because I do think this is a very collaborative business where, even though we're competing against one another, ultimately what we're trying to do is navigate a highly complex sequence of events that go well beyond a transaction and that require cooperation and a meeting of minds. And as we all know in our wonderful planet, getting a meeting of minds is incredibly difficult. So I think next career for agents is politics. Let's clean up that end. We do meeting of minds all the time. We sign contracts. We actually adhere to contracts on a regular basis. Wouldn't it be nice if the rest of the world followed suit?
And I always say, thank God this is not a political show, because I would go off on tangents that you wouldn't want to hear.
One of the things that Leonard said is super important. I mean, my philosophy with colleagues is always just to be nice and to be kind. And,
Right.
even though supposedly we are in a very competitive business, you should never let that sort of impinge how you're behaving with your colleagues. And, I don't do it for this reason, but the truth is that when you start doing a difficult deal, if you have a good relationship with the other broker, it can mean everything. It can mean the difference between a successful deal and an unsuccessful deal. And I just had a situation recently where I was negotiating a deal with a broker I didn't know, and in the beginning, everything seemed really good with this person, and then she got kind of difficult with me, and it almost got in the way of the deal. And I felt really badly about it, and I tried to really hold it together by just sort of swallowing everything I was feeling and staying kind of
That's part of our
focused on the
existence.
deal.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's usually
Names. We want
important.
names.
Write them down. All right, listen, we have to take a break. We'll be right back. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about how we need to fully understand our clients' needs and expectations. So don't go anywhere. All right, so how do you ensure that you fully understand? We all work on referrals, right? We all get referrals coming in, and sometimes we know them, sometimes we don't. How do we fully understand what our clients are asking us, buyers in particular, right? What they want, what their expectation is. As I said to Leonard earlier, sometimes they have incorrect information from the data that they're pulling. Sometimes their expectations are completely way off the mark. How do we fully understand what it is they want, and how then do we try and help them get that? John, so when you're working with somebody for the first time,
Sure.
most people start out, in a fog, okay? They have no clue what they want, and they look to the professional, as Leonard said before, to hopefully guide them into the right, areas. How do you understand what they're looking for?
Sure, I think a big part of it is asking a lot of questions, right? Really getting to know your buyer. Also understand that it's not necessarily just about what they want, but also what they need. And getting them out and experiencing a space with them. A big part of my business and how I started was I started off as a real estate investor. So I started working with buyers, and I found a lot of luck just working with buyers and helping them visualize a space and what's possible, walking them through.
That's a big task, by the way.
Right. It's huge, because a lot of buyers don't have that ability to visualize what's possible. So that has been my focus, and really helping them understand what's possible before and after.
Ryan, so when a client says to you, a seller, let's talk about a seller. A seller says, I want $1.5 million for my apartment, and deep down inside that apartment's only worth about 1.2. I mean, we all experience this on an almost daily basis. Have you ever taken a seller out to look at other properties that are comparable, to kind of get them to understand, okay, so 1.5 might be a bit of a challenge. I'm going to show you things that are comparable to your place. Maybe we'll settle at 1.3, 1.25. Do you ever do that? I mean, I have done it before, and I find it successful. Sometimes.
I haven't needed to do it in that form yet, but I have sent comps, and the short answer is be data-driven. You cannot argue with numbers. When I have a client or a seller specifically that's being unrealistic, I have a methodology of preparing spreadsheets, underwriting their home, and my background's also in real estate investing and development. I had a development company for 10 years before I started my team at Corcoran. And I used the same models that we use to ascertain whether or not development sites made sense that I used to make whether or not a home should be priced as they are, or what I think it should be priced in the first place. And when you present it that way in a clean and objective way, it is very hard to argue with numbers.
Leonard, so what happens when a seller says, but I want 1.5, and you know it's 1.2, and you know you can sell it successfully at 1.2? What's the conversation about?
Well, we don't know whether it's 1.2. I think markets are very malleable and they shift and change all the time. I think pricing is a very, it's not as fixed as we would like it to be, and sometimes patience is valuable. I think if you were to say, what is the price of paper towel, you might have thought differently in March of 2020. When the price of paper towels soared.
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper, yes, because it's a supply and demand driven marketplace that we exist in. And that's why I always feel the best value to any consumer is understanding what is the supply and what is the demand. And I've often found great value taking clients to see competing properties, because I often, when I'm pricing, don't focus as much on past sales and closed and signed contracts. I say, let's pretend we're a barrel, like what do you call it, a basket of apples. And we're going to the Union Square
Red
Market.
apples or green apples?
I prefer a combo because I'm high-tech and high-touch. But I like hybrids and a meeting of minds.
Okay.
But I think the analogy is you take a basket of apples to the Union Square Market, and you're the only basket of apples, and no one else is selling apples that day. Your pricing will be different.
Yeah.
You go to Union Square Market with apples in September where everyone has apples. Your pricing is very different again. So it's a very supply and demand driven marketplace. And sometimes if a seller truly believes their home is worth 1.5 and the comparables and everything is saying 1.2 million, as well as what they're competing against is $1.2 million, then my response to that is ultimately, you are not in a marketplace where you can achieve this, but maybe that marketplace is coming. Let's take it off the market and wait for that market. Are you prepared to do that? Oftentimes the answer is no, and sometimes it's yes.
It depends. You're exactly correct. So, Lisa, I call you a rainmaker. I call all of you today a rainmaker, okay? Top sales in companies, you happen to be number one in my company, Brown Harris Stevens, and consistently, okay? This is not like 1 month you're here, you're consistently up at the top. And it's admirable, and I've known you for many, many years. So tell us how you get there and how you stay there.
So how you get there is a tough one, right? I mean, when I started doing this in 1997, I never said to myself, well, I'm going to be a rainmaker. I'm going to be the top of my profession. I was a lawyer before. I thought I would try it out and see how I did. And I did well, and it suited my personality. The fact that it's, multitasking all the time and social and moving around, it suited my personality. I think what happens is, as a rainmaker, rainmaking begets rainmaking. So, I will say that I don't think anybody is born a rainmaker. I think you mature, you get older, you get better at what you do. You get better at being in a social situation and being able to talk about what you do. Like I always tell people, I never walked into a situation, I still don't now, with business cards and hand them out. I don't think that's how you become a rainmaker. You become a rainmaker because you can speak to people and people trust you and they want to talk to you and they want to take your advice. And then I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, and I really think this is so important, is you've got to be scrappy and you've got to work hard. It's all about hard work. You've got to go out. You have to go places. You have to meet with people. You have to be present, and that is how you continue to be a rainmaker. Obviously, you need to do a good job at what you're doing to continue bringing in business. And again, I think that you have to be able to sell yourself in a soft way so that people want to come to you rather than you forcing yourself on them. That's how I have seen myself in doing it over the years.
Ryan, I look at I mean, I agree with Lisa 100%, and I look at our position, and she kind of alluded to it, that we're the advisor, okay? I don't like the term broker. I don't like the term agent. I consider us and think of us as advisors. So same for you. You had a development business before you got into real estate. You are now in real estate. You are very successful at the top of your game. How did you get there, and how do you stay there?
I think for me, the uniqueness of my background was my great advantage. Leonard was saying before we started how he had studied music, you in broadcasting, Lisa as a lawyer. Most brokers don't start in real estate before
100%.
they get into real estate. I'm kind of a weird anomaly in the brokerage world in that I've only ever done real estate. And when you have a background in development, you get your doctorate in real estate. I understand zoning, I understand real estate finance, I understand the economics of neighborhoods, I understand how to underwrite deals, as I mentioned before, I know how to estimate construction. When you have all of these ancillary, expertise, it facilitates you to give guidance and have a vocabulary that most of your competitors do not. And I believe that is the reason that I had the trajectory I did so quickly, and why I'm able to stay, where I am.
John, how about you? Again, at the top of your game at Douglas Elliman, consistently, as I like to use that word, I follow you on social media. I see everything you're up to. How do you do it?
Sure. A big part of my business is just building very deep relationships and really looking to help and serve my clients and customers on the deepest level possible. I know what it's like to suffer in life, to have hard times, to hit rock bottom. And I even help a lot of people navigate through very difficult times, whether it's a death in the family, probate, estate sales, short sales, foreclosures, whatever I could do to best help my clients, which has allowed us to buy, sell, and flip about 5 to 10 properties a month. So it's actually allowed us to help people navigate through very difficult times, and also help my team do a lot of deals and really just do good business and help a lot of people.
So you agree that you put yourself in that advisory kind of position to help the team members, to help your clients understand what is out there for them on any topic. Mr. Leonard, okay? Top of the game, 100 years. I don't even know. All the years that I know
I'll never be
you.
number one because I don't like that. You know why? Because there are 10,000 number ones, and I cannot deal. In real estate, there are too many number ones, so I'm definitely not number one.
Well, you're way up there, okay?
By the way, he's only been doing it. I realize you've been doing it as long as me,
No.
25 years.
I'm
You said
26
that.
years.
So you're 26.
Oh, you are?
I'm older, and you look young. Thank
25,
God this is a radio
26,
show.
21.
Because I have a young husband. I have to stay young.
There you go.
That's my secret.
How do you do it? How did you get there? How do you stay there? I mean, because people really look to the top performers in our industry, whether they're outside the industry or within the industry. They look at the top performers and say, wow, I want to be Leonard. I want to be Ryan or John or Lisa. How did you get there?
I have a few secrets. One, I throw drinks at other agents. Number two, I post on Instagram that I fly private because people really want to know about that. And number three, I go on the most expensive vacations in the world. Actually, I do the exact opposite. I am not obsessed with transactions, and I'm also not that obsessed with blowing my own horn, which I think my clientele appreciates. I think there are other agents who do things differently and it works for them. I understand that. I'm fine with that. I just have my own personal style that I have to tap into to be authentic. If I threw a drink, I'd probably miss. But I think
That would be me. Exactly.
I think the key to me is I am not obsessed with transactions. I am obsessed with consumer relations and ongoing advisory that starts weeks, months, and years before I transact and continues forever after a transaction. So I think it's a combination of caring, some competence for sure. I attribute that all to my team members because they're the ones who are delivering the competence because my brain's fried. And then most importantly, I think what I deliver to the table is I have experience helps. I also have a background in design, so I can help in that regard. I understand cost because I build, and that's definitely meaningful. Most importantly, I think I provide non-Googleable insights. And I think in a world where everyone wants to, myself included, wants to cure their own health issue via a Google search, I think the same thing is true in real estate, that everyone believes it's that simple and that indeed you can find all you need to know via Google search, where in reality, it's the non-Googleable insights that add real value to the consumer that they are willing to pay for because they see meaningful value. And I've always felt in any marketing, to whomever you're marketing to, if you automatically answer the question, what's in it for me? You will win the consumer over because they will automatically see that their interests are your priority, not yours.
Let's talk about younger agents, okay? What do you say to younger agents, younger team members, younger agents who might come to you and say, hey, I want to get into this business? It's astounding to me how people straight from college these days are coming into the real estate industry. I mean, this is my third career, okay? Teaching, IBM, and then tech companies, and then real estate, right? So you feel that you're a little more experienced in the people business, right? Because you've done and I was a salesperson at IBM, so you've done all these things, you know how to talk to people. These kids, come from college and go right into the industry, and I think, wow, that's bold.
Vince, that's a microaggression.
Yes, I know. It's like, that's bold. How do you do that? So, Lisa, when somebody comes to you and says, listen, I want to get in the business, or I am in the business and I'm just starting, and can you give me some advice? What do you tell them?
Well, I have probably...
Other than get out of the business.
Probably I have a unique take on that because my 29-year-old son works with me, and he's worked with me for almost 3 years. So when he was a senior in college, we started talking about the fact that maybe he wanted to come and work with me. He was always interested in real estate. And I really felt that he should do something different first. So
he did.
So he did, and he went and worked in mortgage finance for almost 2 years. And then I told him to go work for another broker before he came to work for me. So that was my way of sort of telling him, I didn't want to be the first job he had after college. But what I do on a daily basis with him is I try to teach him, both by telling him, but more by modeling, that this is a very hard job and that, you can't follow these brokers on Instagram. Looks like it's sexy and they have fancy watches. By the way, my watch is not fancy.
Either.
And wearing all their fancy clothes and, posting about the deals they did. It's not easy money. And anybody who thinks it's easy money is going to be sorely disappointed.
Well, that's what I was getting at, okay? Because they think, from the TV shows and the Instagrams that, oh my God, I'm going to be, I'm going to have all these big open house parties and the company is going to pay for it and it's blah, blah. No.
Right. And, so I always think that, unfortunately, sometimes it's good when these agents start off, when the first one or two of their deals dies and they make no money after working on something really hard, or they work really hard on something and then their commission gets cut or whatever it is, because you sort of have to learn. And I know that I learned the hard way. Because, back when I started, there were no assistants and all these other things. I mean, one of the issues I often have, too, is that young brokers always want to know where the assistant is, who's the person who's going to do the board package, all of these other things. And I try to explain to Max, my son, and any other young agent who's starting off, you need to know how to do a board package. You need to know how to do the basic things that are so important to being a broker. You can't jump over those things. And you also need to work really hard. You can't stop looking at emails at 6:30 at night and start again the next morning and expect to be successful, because there's going to be somebody out there who's reading emails past 7 o'clock until 11, like your mother. And it's just not going to work. Whether you like it or not, we work in a business that is 24/7, and because of technology, if you want to get your start and you want to be successful, you're going to have to do that. And, I still work really hard, but I always tell Max and I tell other young agents that when I started in this business, one of the reasons why I became successful quickly is because I worked 7 days and I worked a ton and I never said no. And I remember the first year I was working, I worked on Friday after Thanksgiving, and I remember somebody saying to me, well, you're going to show on Friday after Thanksgiving? That's a day that everybody has off. And I said, well, first of all, it's not a day that everybody has off. And second of all,
They're
work
free
when
to look
other people
on
have
Friday.
off. And that is something you have to learn. And I think that's the most important lesson, is that it's super hard work and it's not easy money.
No. Max is great, by the way. I remember him when he was in the mortgage financing business, in the beginning. He's a really good guy. Ryan, you are still young, okay, unlike the rest of us, or maybe you are. So do young people look up to you or come to you for advice and say, hey, you look at what you've done. How can I get there? And by the way, I remember, to Lisa's point, when I came out of college, I'm glad to see it still happens. When I came out of college, I wanted to go right to the president's job. I'm like, I don't need to do all these things. I don't need to start at the bottom. Sales, okay, but why can't I be the leader of the group?
Yeah.
Okay? It's still the same, right? What do you do?
I do get approached by a lot of younger people, and while I am young, I am not young in the industry.
Right.
I started in real estate when I was 17 years old. I worked in a different real estate job every year throughout my college time, and then hit the ground running. We were talking about Alad Properties before as breaking news. My first job out of college was working for Alad Properties. I was right under Mickey Naftali as he started Naftali Group.
Oh.
It's and they built this tremendous company,
Yeah,
and
of
I was there at the fairly early stages when it was a very lean team, and I was seeing how everything is done, how deals are sourced, how real estate is thought about, how it's planned, everything from floor plans to pricing and location, and just understanding the city. So when young people come to me and say, "How do I do it?" You have to do your homework. It doesn't come overnight. I read constantly. Again, we talked about this earlier today. I'm out there. I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I'm understanding what's going on in the business before the headlines come as far as trends and data, and you have to do all of those things.
And not to forget the technical aspects of what we do, as Lisa mentioned, board packages and all of that stuff that most agents don't want to do.
Right.
But I've always said, once you learn it, and then you get to a point where you don't really have to because now you have a team or you have assistants or whatever, fine. But you need to understand, because when something goes wrong, who are they going to call? They're not going to call the assistant. They're going to call you. And if you've never looked at the package before and have no clue what is in that package, what are you going to say? So it is a little bit crazy. All right, we're going to take a break and come back. We're going to talk a lot about charisma and how that works in our business. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back. All right, so guys, confidence and charisma are often associated with being successful as an agent. So as I said earlier at the top of the show, it's all about personality. It's all about having the people skills to deal with people. As I say to my continuing ed students when I'm teaching, this is the most people-intense business you can ever imagine. I've been a salesperson all my life in corporate America, and I used to think, oh boy, are these people, difficult to deal with. You come into this very raw people business, and it's all-consuming. It can be crazy. It can be insane. People are rude to you, and as you said before, Lisa, you got to kind of keep it, bite your tongue, and just do your thing and stay professional. But there's I think a confidence that we develop as we're in the business for a while, and a charisma that we need to have. So when people meet you outside, whether it's another agent or whether it's a client, a seller or a buyer, that say, he's likable. I could really work with her. Or these guys really, or this team really, seems to, to map to who I am. How difficult is it to develop that? Because, by the way, be very honest with you, most people don't have charisma and most people don't have charm. It's something I think you have to learn. I think a lot of it is innate, but I think a lot of it is we have to learn because of the people business we're in. What do you say?
Well, I don't possess charm, and I don't have charm, but I do have a fake British accent, which is much more effective. And actually, to put it quite seriously, I do think having my accent has been very advantageous, because I think people in America listen to a British accent and automatically assume
I'm
it's
in
a
love
fake.
with the British accent.
Well, it's fake because it's from South
Truth be told.
Africa. So it fits
I
in
know.
perfectly to our world.
I know.
But it definitely has been very helpful. I don't necessarily, if I was someone looking for an agent, look for someone who's going to blow me away with personality, just the way when I go to my doctor, I'm not going for a laugh. But I do think...
You're not going to get it from the doctor anyway. They have no bedside manner.
Well, if you'd look at my plastic surgeon, you'd be laughing right now. But I think the biggest value add I see in an agent that I would like to work with, that I think maybe people look to me to work with because of, if that is English, is speaking with a voice of authority that has credibility. I think that is the charisma I'm looking for in an agent, because
Well said.
I think not only is it the non-Googlable insights and intelligence and experience that you're seeking out of an agent, but you're also seeking reassurance, because I think what people truly underestimate and undervalue is the role of the agent to be the calm force of reason in the storm. And all real estate is highly emotional, and that is with my first-time junior buyer or renter all the way up to a billionaire client. This is an emotional aspect of life. And navigating those emotions in an intelligent and authoritative manner, and maybe injecting some humor and lightheartedness in it to put things into perspective, has enormous value to the consumer. So, if you think of Warren Buffett, he's had every doctorate bestowed upon him, but he only has one certificate on his wall, and that's from a course he completed doing a Dale Carnegie course on public speaking, because he realized that even if he was speaking to one person, that's public speaking, and he recognized early in his career that he lacked in that department. So yes, you can develop certain skills, and just like anything, you repeat a skill for 30 days and you build a good habit as you can build a bad habit.
It's so funny you say public speaking. When I was in college, I took a couple of public speaking classes. We had to become a teacher or whatever, and I was certified as a teacher as I graduated. But anyway, the first time I stood up in front of an audience, I thought, this is painful. This is your classmates, right? And where do you start? Where do you end? What do you do? Do you look at the paper? Do you look? And then after a couple of times, I felt like, hey, look, it is what it is. You're either going to like me or you're not going to like me. And I'm going to try and be...
Parents teach you a lot of the basics, like eye-to-eye contact, a smile,
Well,
a
that was
gesture.
the hardest thing for me, to look at the people that you're talking to, not just, down here and they're all out there. Look, eye contact is everything. John, what says you?
So for me, self-improvement is huge. I've read a lot of books, and also I actually just went to Tony Robbins last week. I went to Unleash the Power Within, where I walked on fire the first night. Pretty powerful, but his
You did that?
Yes.
Look at his head.
So his training is all about mindset, feeling fear, and just pushing through it. So for me, it's really just a lot of self-development, pushing through fear, doing things that I'm fearful of, and just keep going. But also, when I'm working with a client, it's really showing your value, really helping them at any cost, and also showing love and loving all people. I think that's really important, and having empathy and good EQ for every transaction.
Empathy is big. All right, let's talk about negotiations, okay? People hire us. People want to work with you, whether they're a buyer or seller, because they feel like you're in the business long enough, you have lots of experience. More importantly, you're going to be best at negotiating, because, of course, everybody wants their price. A buyer wants their price. The seller wants their price. Ryan, so when it comes to negotiations, and it really can be difficult, it can be, tough, whatever, how do you get through that and successfully have both sides feeling like they walk away with something good?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the answer to this draws upon a lot of different categories we've touched. One is about having relationships with other brokers. I mean, I once heard somebody say your first client is actually the broker on the other side of the deal.
Absolutely.
So that is one component of making a negotiation go smoothly. The second, I mentioned earlier, talking about being data-driven. When you have a set of parameters and you understand where pricing should be with a degree of objectivity, it makes it a little bit easier to keep a level head. And then I think the final thing is, part of negotiation is knowing when to walk away, is knowing when to say no. No, you're not paying that, or no, you're not taking that number that low. It is worth more. And being a little bit detached from an emotional standpoint, which I agree with Leonard, this is an incredibly emotional process for anyone at any price point. Kind of desensitizing to that, or relying on your advisor to help you do that. Those are really the three factors I think that need to meet for a negotiation to be effective.
Lisa, so you got a tough seller, let's say 45, 70 days on the market, not that that's your experience, but just using an example, and you're getting offers, but they're nowhere near what the asking price is. And I mean, for a whole host of reasons. The market's a little weird right now, or maybe it was overpriced, or maybe it was grossly overpriced. Tough seller, tough negotiation. How do you get that seller over the line to understand that, look, you either take this because it's going to be the best offer you get, or we just move on? What do you do?
So, I always tell, in a situation like that where you have a few bids at around the same number, to me, what it means to me is that's what the property's worth at that time. What I try to explain to a seller is, while it may have been worth more 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, the market's speaking. Because the truth is, buyers know best. There is no buyer out there in New York City, I don't think in any market, who looks at 3 properties and buys something. They look at 10, 20, 30,
19.
40 properties, right. By the time they make an offer, they know exactly what their budget should buy them. So if you have more than 2 bids around the same number on a property, I really believe that that's what the property is worth at the time. And I explain it to a seller in a kind way. I don't do it in a blunt way or like, this is it, this is what you're going to get. You have to explain to them that it may be less than their expectations. It may be less than it was a year ago. It may be a lot less than they paid for the property 5 years ago. And that's the hardest part of the market right now, is there's a lot of people losing money on their properties. Nobody ever wants to lose money. And, for a long time, people felt that you always made money in real estate. And that's just not true anymore. So I think you have to be kind, you have to be diplomatic, but you also have to be firm that if you have several people making similar offers, the market is speaking. And while none of us have a crystal ball, I can't guarantee that you're going to get more in another time. And then the other thing I'll always say is if you have more than 2 or 3 offers at the same price, is now's the moment where we can get the most. Because if you have more than 2 people bidding on something, that's the way you're going to be able to push people, is if you have more than one person. And I will say that in a soft market, the hardest part about getting buyers up, if you represent a seller, is that you only have one bidder. And if you only have one bidder, you have to sort of play a dance where you represent your seller and you're not too eager, but you're not too tough either, because you don't want that one bidder to go away. And Will Zeckendorf, the owner of our company, said something to me, I think the last tough market we had, maybe it was 2019. He said, in a market like this, if you have a bidder, make a deal with that bidder.
Precisely.
Because you don't know when you're getting another one. And there are too many sellers who have seen or have had that happen to them now.
You're only as good as your last offer, oftentimes, even in hot bidding war markets. Leonard, in a city as competitive as New York City is, across the board, okay, how do you differentiate yourself to stand outside of the typical box, whatever the typical box is, where, you stand out, you remain, successful, and people who want to work with you for a reason? How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, you're all stars here, big time. But how do you differentiate? Earlier you said you don't look at other agents as competitors. I don't either, because I always think that there's plenty of business out there for everybody. If you do your job right, you're going to find the business. How do you differentiate yourself, though, among everybody out there?
He has better outfits.
And he's wearing a shirt that matches our graphic. I'm totally impressed. He stands out today at the table, right?
Well, I do think the accent I'll go back to does help. It really does help.
It does.
I also am very trained from my fashion background to look forward to where things are trending in a market, not just in the way of sales, but also in the mood and the tone of what's happening. And I remember way back when agents were dressing funky, I went to Savile Row. And when everyone dressed Savile Row or a variation thereof, I veered a little bit in a slightly different direction. So I think you have to differentiate yourself via elegant quality rather than a gimmick.
And be aware.
Yes. I mean, some people use gimmicks and they work. There are multiple channels now that are new that when I started didn't even exist to differentiate yourself. And what I am always cognizant of is I don't want to be differentiated for the wrong reasons. Some people are, and they get rewarded for it. I mean, this is the world we live in, whether I like it or not. I fight for the other version. I've lost the battle.
Correct. Ryan, same thing. I consider you a star. Everybody at this table is a star. You've worked hard. You've got to where you want to go. Of course, you want to go further and continue to do more and keep that consistent. But how do you feel like you individually differentiate yourself from the thousands of other agents that are out there in this field?
Yeah, I think 2 main ways. I mean, the first one, not to sound like a bit of a broken record, but my experience is something that's always, since I started on the brokerage side, has set
all about
me apart.
experience.
And Also, I think I've been very forward with technology. I mean, I've embraced it and I've tried to take advantage of it rather than shy away from it. One way is through social media. I got involved with social media very early on. I was able to build a pretty substantial following organically on my pages, which has amplified exposure for myself, for my business, my transactions, and it's free.
It's free. Yeah.
It only costs you some time. And the other thing is Street Easy, which a lot of brokers don't like Street Easy. Street Easy offers programs that helps introduce you to buyers that are very controversial because of the methods in which they do that.
Yeah.
I was a very early adapter of that program because I saw it as a way of, if this is an additional avenue to mining business, why would I not give it a try? And that program has helped grow up my business. So I think it's about, again, Leonard had said something about embracing trends. I think I've leaned into that specifically with the technology side.
Great segue. So let's talk about social media. You're very big on social media, John. Do you find that it's helping your business, just putting yourself out there, not helping your business? How do you approach it every day, and what do you think the result is for you and or your business?
Sure. Social media became more of a must, not really an option. I also come from a design background, so I'm purely visual, and I love to create. I started creating Instagram and Facebook content maybe 7-8 years ago, and then I hired a real estate coach, and he's like, I want you to make cold calls and make videos every single day. I was like, those are two things I don't want to do, but I started doing it. I'm like, I'm paying this guy, so I better do what he's saying. So every day I just started shooting videos with my cell phone. First video, the cup holder of my car, and I couldn't even look at the camera, but I shot the video and I posted it, and I broke through that fear, and I just kept doing it. And eventually I just started to grow this organic following where I was just documenting my day. And that's been my main focus, not really creating something, but how do I document what I'm doing and be transparent and show people what I'm up to, whether it's renovating a house, taking my son to school, or helping a client with a transaction.
He's adorable and he's getting bigger. I don't know him, but I see it.
Thank
But
you
one
very
of the
much.
things I think that you do successfully, and I think all agents need to do, is get a little bit of a mix of your personal life and of your business. Because, when you talk to sellers, you use the word Google several times today. A seller's going to Google you to see who you are, and then they're going to go to your social media to see who you are, what you're about, especially if they don't know you, right? And I remember the first time I walked, when my dog was still alive, and I walked into a pitch, this is years ago, and the sellers are sitting, we're just chatting about whatever, and it was a referral, so I didn't really know who they were, and they said, you seem to have a great relationship with your dog. I think it's really wonderful. And mind you, their dog is running all over the place, right, in the apartment. And I'm thinking, how do they know that I have a dog, right? I mean, all right, so I got referred by a friend, but, they're not going to talk about my dog. And then she said to me, I know you're wondering how I know about that. I said, well, actually, I am. She said, Facebook. And I said, It works, right? So if you mix a little bit of personal, a little bit of business, people need to know and want to know who you are. Let's talk about AI. You posted recently, or you said something that I read. Are you utilizing AI in your business? Are you?
Yes, so we use it for a few different things. Agents on my team use it for writing copy, and we're also experimenting with new ways of creating videos with AI where we can blast out to thousands of people by manipulating what you say and how you look. So we're testing a few things right now.
Do you get nervous with the word manipulating?
A little bit. I did as I said it, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Leonard, are you utilizing artificial intelligence?
Well, I think the world discovered AI in 2023, but we've actually been using it for several years in our systems at Compass. And it's enormously helpful on many levels, but I always think that you've got to be very careful that if AI is going to replace the human, then it's going to replace the agent too, potentially. But when I look at some descriptions that are written by AI, I look at them and go like, those are nice suggestions. And I do think technology is wonderful when it aids and suggests, but when it replaces, I've seen, there used to be a reality TV voice where someone walked in and said, oh, this is nice. And the producer says, no. You have to say it with more enthusiasm, go like, oh, this is nice. Well, now we have an AI voice. And it's immediately recognizable, and it's not authentic. And I think when you lose authenticity in marketing, you can lose your audience.
Yeah. Listen, I've said about AI, I totally agree with what you just said, but I think if you do use it, you need to add some color. okay? Because it's just like any other search engine. It's going to give you the bare bones, the facts, the whatever, non-kind of descriptive whatever. So if you want to add some color, make it your own, then I'm okay with that. It's the people who pull down from AI and just carbon copy what they see. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work.
Well,
right?
I think there's cute AI, which is the ChatGPT. That's the cute AI.
Well, correct.
But the really great AI is the ability of computers to take in massive volumes of data and intelligence and information and extrapolate from that really unusually intelligent intelligence. That has value, and that can be applied to doing smarter business and can be enormously time and cost saving. But I think it has to be very carefully used.
Yeah, and according to the news last night when I was watching the news, with AI now being absorbed by, or one company being absorbed by Microsoft, I'm like, okay, here we go, Microsoft yet again getting involved. Leonard, one last question to you. You posted recently on social media saying, and I love this, baby boomers may have sustained the real estate market of 2023 armed with a lifetime of savings, hard work, and sacrifice, and they have a lot of cash, okay? They are not just buying second homes for themselves, but also helping kids and their grandkids, okay? You say they understand the value of time, and waiting is not an option for many of them. Explain that.
Well, I'm that age. I understand. Time is the last luxury. And unfortunately, so many life's decisions are delayed for bad reasons. Sometimes they're delayed for good reasons, but oftentimes they're delayed for really bad reasons. And you can never repurchase time. You cannot reclaim time.
Yeah.
And I think that understanding is something you gain, and it grows as you become older and wiser. So time is the last luxury. And I think not only is an older generation more keenly aware of that, but we also have to remember that if we thought the last 3 years that delivered $7 trillion worth of stimulus was a really big deal, brace yourself and fasten your seatbelt, because over the next 20 years, we will see 70 trillion. That's 7 times the amount of stimulus we saw in the last 3 years, transferred from older generations to younger generations. And that is the kind of stimulus this planet has never seen. And it will be, in some ways, a rebalancing of grotesque inequalities, and in other ways it'll be extraordinarily valuable to real estate. But it worries me because I think if you aren't focusing on supply, you could have a real problem down the road with price escalation. So I think the person who wins the bidding war or who wins the negotiation day is not necessarily the one who's getting a good price. It's the one who's getting the quality property.
100%. All right, we've got a minute left. So, Lisa, what do you see as the biggest opportunity in New York City, in our markets, in the next coming year? And also, do you feel like the presidential election year coming up is going to affect this market or markets in any significant way?
So when you ask me what's the biggest opportunity for whom?
Buyers and sellers.
So for buyers, the biggest opportunity is to look for anything that's been on the market for more than 8 months and has had multiple price reductions. Go for it. There is so much, at this point, I think, undervalued properties out there that just started way too high, chased the market down. I'm a big believer if you can pass a co-op board in buying a renovated co-op. I think that they are very, very much undervalued, especially if they're in a great location. I'm not going to say a rec. We used to say a rec, but recs are often more trouble than they're worth because the cost of renovation is so high. If you can find a renovated co-op in a good location and it's been sitting on the market for a while, I would jump on it every day of the week. For sellers, the opportunity is if you want to sell, you need to price it correctly. You need to listen to your broker. You have to, one of the things we said in the beginning is you need to look at what else is on the market. What has really affected the real estate market in the last 10 to 15 years is the choices that people have. And every time a property goes on the market in a neighborhood where there's new development products that are sexier than what you're putting out there, those resale items suffer. So it's really all about making sure that you're well positioned in relation to what else people have choices, because at any given time, buyers are going to look at whatever's available. So you have to be, I hate to use this term, but you have to be the prettiest girl at the dance. Both the way you're presented and your price.
Can I do that? I don't know. Correct.
And then the last thing is, do I think the election is going to affect things? Yes and no. I think that we've had so many major news events in the last since COVID, that I think that something like an election is already baked into our market. I think our market is unsure and shaky and tough because we're already worried about the election. Because it used to be that people started talking about an election, 8 months before the election. Now we talk about it as soon as a new president is elected, we start talking about the next election. So we're well into the new presidential election. And I don't know that it's going to make a big difference. I think really what's going to make a difference is how the economy is seen overall, where the interest rates go. Interest rates probably are the most important thing.
Ryan?
To the election part or to
Both. Well, let's start with where do you think the market's going to go next year, based on where we've been.
I don't
all
think
of
it's going
this year.
anywhere good. I think there's so many geopolitical things. There's so many with rates. I mean, so many different aspects we've touched on right now that I think there's going to continue to be buy side opportunity, as Lisa said. I do like the RECs. That might be because of my development
Correct.
background. Also, a lot of the costs of renovation of raw materials, et cetera, have gone up.
Supply
had gone
chain.
Up.
But they're coming down.
But they're coming down, which is why it starts to get interesting to me. They're not down a lot, you're right, but they may continue. If raising rates and curing inflation is in fact effective, some costs should be coming down. And then if you're able to buy something at an opportunistic discount and be able to renovate for less than what everyone's anticipating you would renovate for now, those deals do seem interesting to me sometimes. If you're in a difficult co-op or there's some sort of other logistical issue, then that's another thing.
All right, we are out of time, but Leonard, you get the last word.
Rates are going to come down starting March. It's going to turn into a crazy seller's market. That's my prediction for next year.
Starting March.
I think we will see not only inflation come down, but I think we're going to see deflation. It's happening already.
It's going to happen because of the presidential election.
It's happening already.
All right, we're coming right back with my thoughts of the week. Don't go anywhere. All right, everybody, my thoughts of the week. Leadership in real estate is multifaceted, and that demands a unique blend of vision, strategic acumen, and interpersonal skills. A successful real estate leader goes beyond transactional expertise, guiding their team with a clear vision for navigating the ever-evolving landscape of its markets. They inspire confidence and foster a collaborative environment, understanding that real estate is not just about bricks and mortar, but also about relationships, as we talked about today, and trust. Effective leaders in real estate exhibit adaptability, steering their teams through the market fluctuations with resilience and foresight. They prioritize continuous learning, staying abreast of industry trends and technological advancements to equip their teams with the tools needed for success. Above all, real estate leadership is about empowering individuals within the organization, fostering a culture of innovation, and ensuring that every team member is aligned with the collective goal of delivering exceptional value to clients while contributing positively to the communities they serve. And that's our broadcast for today. Thanks so much to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. In addition, if you want to email me here at the show, you can at talkingnyc@bhsusa.com. Shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And to my viewers and listeners all around the world, once again, thanks for taking a bit of your time today to be with us, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.